So for today's deep dive, we're starting with a question that well, I think almost everyone has asked themselves at some point.
Oh, for sure.
You know, it's late at night, you're staring at the ceiling, dreading the next day, and you think, am I burnt out or am I just lazy?
Exactly. And there's so much pressure there.
Right. Productivity is treated like this moral virtue. So if you miss a deadline or, you spend 3 hours scrolling instead of doing the laundry, the immediate judgment is that you just lack willpower.
And that's the thing. We've all been trained to feel this immediate guilt. But what looks identical on the outside, the low motivation, the inactivity, it feels completely different on the inside.
That's what we're getting into.
Yeah, our sources today really challenge that whole idea of laziness. They basically frame it as a myth, arguing that what we see as sloth is often, a symptom of something much deeper, a biological or emotional issue.
That distinction is everything. It's about moving past, judging the behavior, and starting to assess the clinical reality.
Is it a lack of willpower or is it a systemic breakdown?
Exactly. Okay, let's unpack this. Our mission today is to separate laziness, which we'll define as a temporary choice, from these chronic states like burnout, and even from mental health conditions like depression. We're going to give you the concrete, clinical, and the neurobiological distinctions.
So you can actually figure out what you might be facing.
Right, to stop punishing yourself for it. So to start, let's just define the spectrum. Laziness, in its simplest form, is what?
A lack of desire by choice.
Right. You intentionally avoid something you don't want to do. You skip the gym because the couch looks better. Simple. But burnout. Burnout is far more insidious.
How so?
Well, the World Health Organization defines it as a syndrome from chronic exposure to unmanaged stress. It's almost always linked to the workplace.
So it's an environmental problem.
It's a problem of the environment, yes.
Right.
The system you're in. It's not a personality flaw. You didn't run out of motivation. You literally ran out of physical and emotional capacity.
And depression is a different beast entirely, correct? Oh, absolutely. Depression is a pervasive mental health condition. It is not a choice. And the symptoms have to be persistent. We're talking at least 2 weeks. And they affect all areas of your life.
Not just work.
Not just work, relationships, hobbies, everything. And the critical distinction here is a clinical term called avolition.
Avolition. Okay, that's a powerful word. What does it mean in practice?
It's the inability to start or engage in activities, and this is key. It's due to a lack of motivation or ability, even if you want to act.
So laziness is just unwillingness?
Exactly. With laziness, you could do the dishes, you just don't want to. Avolition is paralysis. You look at the sink, you want the dishes to be clean, but the neural connection you need to just start the task feels severed.
This is where it gets really interesting, comparing those internal experiences. Let's use what we can call the effort test. With laziness, you just decide to conserve energy.
But that decision is fluid.
Right. A big enough reward or consequence can change your mind pretty fast.
Precisely. Now contrast that with the burnt-out person. They're often putting in massive effort. They're trying so hard to focus, but they're just not seeing the results.
The effort-outcome gap.
That's it. They might spend 4 hours on a task that used to take 1. It looks like laziness from the outside, but internally, they are struggling. And the depressed individual, that's the avolition we talked about. They feel physically blocked, even if the reward is huge.
And the emotional profiles have to be completely different too.
Totally. Laziness is, temporary apathy. You move on. But burnout, that involves deep cynicism, detachment.
And irritability, right?
Yes, because they have no emotional energy left to regulate themselves. They're just constantly running on empty. And depression is a much more profound, pervasive shift.
In what way?
We're talking overwhelming hopelessness, persistent shame, guilt, and most critically, anhedonia.
The loss of pleasure in things you used to enjoy.
Yes. If you have true anhedonia, you aren't just choosing not to do your favorite hobby. The joy center in your brain has functionally dimmed. If you can still genuinely look forward to something, even if you're tired, it's more likely exhaustion or burnout, not clinical depression.
Okay, let's focus on burnout specifically for a minute. You said it's a workplace problem, a structural failure. I mean, how pervasive is this, really?
It's massive.
Yeah.
And it's growing. The WHO has those 3 dimensions: depletion, cynicism, and reduced efficacy.
Yeah.
But look at the stats. Recent surveys show 52% of workers feel burned out.
52%.
Yep, and that's a 9% jump since just before COVID. And the economic cost is just staggering. Workplace stress is estimated to cost the global economy about $500 billion a year.
Wait, 500 billion, that number is it's absolutely enormous. That proves it's not just a few people needing a vacation.
It confirms it's an environmental failure, absolutely. When half your workforce is exhausted, the problem isn't their character, it's the system. It makes sense. Burned out employees are 2.6 times more likely to be looking for a new job. They're checked out.
So let's look at the symptoms of burnout that look the most like laziness. You know, the constant tiredness, the missed deadlines.
The main one is physical exhaustion. You feel drained no matter how much you sleep. It could be insomnia, it could be sleeping too much, and that lack of energy makes things like exercise, which should be restorative, feel impossible.
The lazy person decides not to, but the burnt out person feels physically unable to.
Exactly. The fault is systemic. The research is clear. It's linked to unfair treatment, unmanageable workloads, lack of recognition. It's not quiet quitting. It's a biologically mandated withdrawal from a toxic environment.
Okay, now we get to the core of this deep dive, the brain itself. You said this isn't just in your head, it's a measurable metabolic state. So how does the brain actually enforce a stop signal?
This is where it becomes so clear. We have two major mechanisms. The first one involves the part of your brain that does all the heavy lifting, the lateral prefrontal cortex, or LPC.
The executive function center.
Right. Your high-performance engine. It handles complex problem-solving, planning, all of it, and it relies heavily on an excitatory neurotransmitter, glutamate.
Okay, so glutamate is essential, but what happens when you're just pushing that LPC constantly for days on end?
Well, you overload the brain's cleanup crew. Normally, your brain drains excess glutamate from the synapses really quickly. But when the demand is constant, it starts to accumulate in the LPC.
And too much of it is a bad thing.
It becomes neurotoxic. It acts as a biological stop signal. It physically prevents the LPC from working properly. Your brain is essentially putting itself in a necessary power-saving mode.
So that feeling I get at 4 p.m. or I can't think straight and all I want is sugar and to scroll on my phone, that's my brain physically defaulting away from the high-effort LPC.
That perfectly explains it. Your executive control weakens, you get more impulsive, your brain is basically screaming, the energy cost of thinking hard is currently too high.
Wow. And the second mechanism, that involves our reward system, right? The dopamine imbalance hypothesis.
Yes. Dopamine is critical for sustaining effortful behavior and for the brain's cost-benefit analysis. Is the reward worth the effort?
So fatigue messes with that calculation.
It disrupts the whole pathway, the loop between the striatum and the prefrontal cortex. The brain concludes that high-effort tasks are just too costly for the potential reward.
And that leads to a preference for low-effort, immediate rewards.
Exactly why mindless scrolling or playing a simple game suddenly feels so necessary. It's an easy dopamine hit. And imaging studies actually back this up. They show reduced glucose metabolism in these dopamine regions in fatigued patients. Their unmotivated behavior is a physical result of reduced neural capacity, not a lack of virtue.
That brings up a really important question. What about the toll of chronic stress itself, the high cortisol? What does that do to the actual structure of the brain?
Well, that chronic stress dysregulates the HPA axis, your fight or flight system, and long-term high cortisol is neurotoxic. We see actual physical changes like dendritic shrinkage in the prefrontal cortex.
So the branches that receive information are physically shrinking.
They are, which impairs your ability to problem solve and regulate emotions.
So that feeling where every tiny email feels like a huge emergency, that's a physical consequence.
Exactly. Your brain functionally switches from top-down PFC control, the thoughtful state, to bottom-up control driven by the amygdala,
The fear center.
the fear and anxiety center. You are literally operating in a threat response state, even with mundane tasks. Sustained focus becomes impossible.
And what's fascinating here is how society prevents us from addressing this. This is what you call the laziness lie.
Yes, it's this deep-seated cultural belief that equates your productivity with your self-worth. It has roots in, Puritan morality, industrial capitalism.
Yeah.
It trains us to distrust our own feelings of exhaustion, to just push past our biological limits.
Which makes the solution so much harder. The first step isn't to try harder, it's to stop punishing yourself. So if willpower isn't the answer, how should someone start to manage their recovery?
The first step is just validating the problem, breaking that cycle of self-blame. On an individual level, we always start with the big three: sleep, healthy meals, exercise. But for burnout, boundary setting is crucial.
Clear end times for the workday.
Clear end times, refusing to check after-hours emails, learning to say no without feeling guilty, and high social support is vital. It measurably increases your resilience.
I think a lot of people will say, I took a vacation, I slept for a week, and I still feel this way. Why isn't just sleeping more enough?
Because that only addresses physical rest. But if your brain is depleted from emotional labor or your LPC is still clogged with glutamate, physical rest alone won't solve it. This is why we need a more holistic framework, like the 7 types of rest.
Okay, let's dive into a couple of those. How do they link back to the neurobiology?
Okay, take mental rest. If glutamate accumulation is the issue, mental rest means giving that LPC a break so the cleanup crew can work. This might be doing something mindless and structured, like folding laundry or organizing a drawer.
A task with minimal executive control.
Exactly. It lets the system drain and catch up.
And what about emotional rest?
That's huge for someone dealing with cynicism and irritability. It means having an authentic conversation where you don't have to fake it. That constant effort of emotional regulation, forcing a smile, dealing with incompetence gracefully, that's incredibly taxing on the prefrontal cortex.
So you need a space where you can just be yourself.
Without performing, yes. And then there's sensory rest. Burnout is often made worse by constant sensory overload, bright lights, constant noise, the blue light from screens. Even 15 minutes of silence or a tech detox can give your amygdala a measurable break.
And if someone's symptoms are really persistent, if they're feeling that deep guilt, hopelessness, and anhedonia for more than 2 weeks, when does it cross into needing professional help?
That persistence is the key clinical signal. If that's you, it requires professional support. That means prioritizing therapy, like CBT, and maybe medication. For employers and employees, encouraging the use of these resources is non-negotiable. This isn't just about job function, it's about health and safety.
So that brings us full circle. The big takeaway here is you shouldn't punish yourself for appearing lazy if you're actually operating under the weight of chronic stress or a clinical condition.
Exactly.
That feeling of being totally blocked by a small task, it's not a moral failing, it's a measurable biological event, whether it's glutamate clogging your executive function or dopamine messing with your cost-benefit analysis.
Precisely. If your brain is telling you that effort is metabolically too costly, you have to listen. And the final provocative thought is this. We're all trained to see rest as a reward we have to earn. But what if we accept that exhaustion is a physical stop signal? A metabolic maintenance alert?
A biological maintenance protocol.
Yes. How can we restructure our lives to view rest and even temporary laziness not as a moral failing, but as an essential biological process? I'd encourage you to reflect on whether your avoidance is truly unwillingness, or if it's that biologically mandated state of avolition.